Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. Had a request to do a video today from, I hope I get this right, Cho Fo Show. Anyway, he asked about the U.S. government balance sheet. He asked about why they hold bonds, and then asked if what is the selling of assets and if that's a good or a bad thing. And so I think probably what a lot of people get confused about when they hear about the government balance sheet or the federal balance sheet is they hear two things. They hear the U.S. government, and then they hear the Federal Reserve, and they don't realize there's a difference there. These are two separate entities. They each carry their own balance sheets, each have, well, they have something to do with each other, but they're not the same people. They're different entities, okay? So you got the U.S. government, and on their balance sheet, they hold a lot of different stuff, right? And what their assets are, well, like right now, to the tune of like 44% is student loan asset-backed securities, but they own a lot of different assets out there, not just these student loans, right? And so they have these assets, and then on the other side, they have liabilities, right? And their liabilities are all the treasuries that they have issued out there. Those things are eventually due back, or they eventually come due where they have to make a payment plus the interest that goes along with these treasuries. So that's the U.S. government's liabilities, are all these treasuries that they have sold. Their assets are a group of a lot of different things, with a good chunk of it being the student loan asset-backed securities. So that's the U.S. government. Over on the other side, you got the Federal Reserve, and now they're a completely different organization, a completely different entity, and they also have a balance sheet that has assets and liabilities on it. Now, their assets are the U.S. treasuries that the Treasury had sold, but they also have a lot on their balance sheets, or as far as their assets go, treasuries being a main part of it, but there's also stuff like mortgage-backed securities, okay? And their liabilities is all the dollars that are floating in circulation. So if you're not familiar with quantitative easing, 10 years ago, the Federal Reserve started printing up a bunch of money and buying the treasuries, right? Buying the U.S. treasuries, and they put those on their balance sheet. And to the tune of like $4 trillion worth, a lot of it. And then now what they're trying to do is kind of normalization. So they're not necessarily selling these assets, they're just letting them mature. So these treasuries and mortgage-backed securities, as they are coming due, they are pulling the dollars, the currency, back in out of circulation, right? And so when these treasuries come due and the dollars come back to the Federal Reserve, they essentially destroy these things, and they're no longer in circulation. Now, you got two schools of thought on what's happening, if it's a good or a bad thing when it comes to these assets and the shrinking of the asset sheet from the Federal Reserve, right? So during quantitative easing, the reason why they started printing and buying these treasuries is to drop interest rates down to help stimulate the economy, get people out there buying houses and cars and whatnot. And everything ran real good, except that they printed up a lot of money, and now it's time to try and pull some of that money out of the system by raising the interest rates and pulling the currency back out. So there's two schools of thought. You could be the guy who owns a home, who wants to see that house value increase so that you can pull the money out of the equity out of the house, so to speak, as it goes up in value. Then you got the other, that's, one kind of group, right? There's people who have whether it's stocks or a house or whatever it is that you invested in. You want to see the Federal Reserve drop interest rates, stimulating the economy, forcing people to take out loans to buy these more expensive homes, right? So this is why somebody would want to see the Federal Reserve drop interest rates, is because they want to see the value of their home continue to increase. Now, or at least the price that they could sell it for. Now, the other school of thought about it is that you might be a guy who says, I am trying to save money and I put it in the bank, I don't get an interest rate out of it, okay? Because the interest rates are so low. But as the Federal Reserve is pulling these treasuries back in or pulling the dollars back in by letting their treasuries mature and just pay off, now what you have is a demand for these treasuries that is no longer there. So the Treasury, when they go to sell these treasuries, doesn't have the Federal Reserve just printing up money and buying these treasuries from them, so they have to seek out a buyer for them. The only way to do that is to start raising interest rates up to try and find these investors to buy the treasuries. So yeah, you got two different people out there who want lower interest rates so they can see the assets of the stuff that they purchase go up in value, and then you have a bunch of people out there who want to see higher interest rates because they intend on saving and they want to get a return on their savings. Does that make sense? I hope that works out all right for you guys. Let me show you here. This is still our tree. This is the one that's growing out of the pineling. Oops, sorry guys, bouncy, but there it is, still growing. I think that's a spruce tree. I'm pretty sure that's spruce. All right, talk to you guys later.